Hooters is a popular chain of around 300 restaurants in the United States with an additional 100 or so locations found in almost 30 other countries around the world. Their sales are estimated to be in the range of $800 million a year, which is obviously a lot, but I would say that the awareness and the reputation of Hooters is actually far greater than those numbers reflect. What I mean is that whether or not you have been there before, most of the people watching this already have a detailed image in their mind about them. You probably already know about the televisions on the walls, the famous chicken wings, and probably most of all, the servers. The Hooters girls are widely known for their smiling, friendly personalities, as well as their tight, revealing clothing. Truly, that white t-shirt, orange shorts combo has to be one of the most recognizable uniforms in the industry. I mean, they have done a really good job in creating a distinctive brand and making people aware of it. I can tell you with certainty that the first time I ever heard about them was in the movie Big Daddy with Adam Sandler. It's part of a running joke and the setting of the final scene. It is also the setting of a deleted scene from an Austin Powers movie, where all the friends of one of Dr. Evil's henchmen learn that he has been killed by an ill-tempered, mutated sea bass. You have to watch it to really get that one, and it has been parodied in various cartoons, like South Park. The first Hooters opened for business in Clearwater, Florida in October of 1983, and after 40 years, I have to say that I am impressed by the fact that they are still going this strong. As you might expect, given the overtly sexualized concept, they have endured 4 decades of non-stop criticism and controversies. As we saw in those examples, some of it has been lighthearted mocking. It's kind of an easy target to make fun of. Some of it has been moral objections from women's groups and local communities, and some of it has involved serious accusations, commonly involving harassment, discrimination, or general mistreatment. So in this video, I want to talk about this unusual concept while highlighting some of their more major controversies over the years. Back in 1983, 6 friends came together to start a new business, probably something that a lot of us talk about doing but never quite get it together. Well, these guys made it happen. All of them had experience in business in one way or another, but none of them knew anything about operating a restaurant. Does anyone else have one of those buildings in your area that just keeps turning into something new, almost like it's cursed because any business that moves in always ends in failure? Do you know what I mean? Well, that's the kind of building where they opened the first Hooters, and early on, it was looking like they were going to be added to that list of failures. On their disastrous first day, I guess they had trouble lighting the fryers, they hadn't secured their license to sell beer yet, and they only had 3 customers. Not the strongest start, but they were able to break through it, partially by developing an attractive menu. Being located near the beach, it started out as more of a seafood restaurant, but they were early adopters of chicken wings, serving them back when they were far less popular, and have since made that a core part of their menu. But I think most would agree that a bigger part of their success can be attributed to some creative marketing efforts. Seriously, from the beginning and continuing on over the years, for better or worse, people have been talking about Hooters. I mean, that name itself will catch your attention. They use an owl in the logo because that's the sound they make. The owl himself is the Hooter, but we all know what's going on here. I think it's interesting that, according to one of the founders, they got the idea for the name after watching a Steve Martin comedy bit.
And you should only refer to them as Hooters.
One of their first marketing attempts was to rent a chicken suit and run around nearby streets trying to attract attention. I think they were desperate there, and it did help a little bit. One of them also swam out into the water with a can of orange spray paint to put the word Hooters on a boat that was partially underwater. It was visible from the street, and again, it helped a little bit, mostly because a local newspaper wrote an article about it. But their first big break happened early in the next year, during the Super Bowl between the Raiders and the Redskins, that luckily was being played in the nearby city of Tampa. It was less than an hour away, so John Riggins, the star player of the Washington Redskins, was able to not only eat there before the game, but also return with his teammates late that night after the game. News outlets made reports about it, and it brought some major attention to the restaurant, helping them double in sales. And the ball kept rolling. Shortly after, they made a franchising deal with a group of investors from Atlanta who created Hooters of America to open dozens of new restaurants over the next few years, and did go on to buy the trademark as well. In July of 1986, the original Hooters girl, Lynn Austin, was featured as Playboy's Playmate of the Month, and that was a big deal back then. It included an article about the restaurant, and that raised sales even more than anything from before. More notable marketing efforts: in 1992, they were sponsoring NASCAR driver Alan Kulwicki when he won the Winston Cup at the Hooters 500 race in Atlanta, but the following year, he was tragically killed in a plane crash. He was on a private plane owned by Hooters that was traveling from an autograph signing at one of their restaurants, and I do want to mention that there were others on that plane, including 26-year-old Mark Brooks, the son of the head of Hooters at the time. Ironically, there was briefly a Hooters airline, started a decade later in 2003, not to mention a hotel and casino in Las Vegas that opened in 2006, so yeah, their advertising has gone well beyond typical commercials and billboards. Now, the amount of criticism directed toward Hooters, I would say, has been substantial. There is seemingly always a new lawsuit or scandal or protest. Maybe the most publicized one concerns discrimination with their hiring practices. Simply put, they only hire women for their server positions. They are literally called Hooters girls, and that discriminates against men. In the 1990s, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission launched an investigation against them and demanded that they pay millions of dollars to the men that had been rejected. On one end, you could say that's a fair point. Why should they be able to turn down men instantly because of their gender? But on the other end, that is kind of the whole point, right? Those girls are what they are known for. That's why people go, and their customers would generally prefer their server to be a woman. I don't know, it's a touchy subject, and I don't have the answers here. It makes me think back to that King of the Hill episode, where Dale tries to get a job at a Hooters-like restaurant so he can sue them for discrimination after he's rejected, but then ends up getting hired, and it gets crazy. But the image of Dale wearing that uniform is just ridiculous, and that is pretty much how Hooters went about defending themselves when the investigation was actually happening. They took all of it as yet another marketing opportunity. When they came out with this hairy, mustached character named Vince that would wear the uniform, they spent millions of dollars to put him in full-page ads in popular newspapers, billboards, radio commercials. All of it was trying to show how ridiculous it would be if they were forced to hire men in that position. It was followed by a March on Washington, where a bunch of Hooters girls carried humorous signs in an effort to protest the protest, I guess. The next year, the committee dropped everything to devote their attention to other cases, but there were other civil lawsuits alleging gender discrimination, the biggest of which was a class action one that was settled out of court for $3.7 million in 1997. Now, all of that I just talked about was only concerning the men that never got hired, so let me move on to the women who did get hired. For them, there have been examples of alleged racial discrimination. In 2015, a black woman in Baltimore was not allowed to wear blonde highlights in her hair because it looked unnatural. She was ultimately fired over it and awarded $250,000 after it was ruled to be racial discrimination. And as recent as 2023, a location in North Carolina was sued for discriminating against black women in their hiring decisions while they were restaffing following the pandemic. And there have also been just seemingly countless sexual harassment and assault allegations from women accusing the owners, managers, and even other employees of acting inappropriately. In 1993, in a lawsuit that was settled out of court, 3 women who worked at the Mall of America location in Minnesota claimed that they had been touched inappropriately and verbally abused by male co-workers. In 2000, a woman testified that her managers tried to force her to go home with them, and one even threatened to tie her up. The case ended in her receiving $275,000. In 2004, there was a case where more than 40 women in California were filmed while changing their clothes during part of the interview process. Now, there are others along the same lines, but those are the ones that stand out to me, and I think you get the point. There have also been issues in various other areas. In 2021, there was this big social media backlash where Hooters girls posted videos where they were practically disgusted by how revealing their new uniforms were. Those videos ended up getting millions of views, so the company did end up backtracking by saying that they could wear those new uniforms, or they could just stick to the old ones. It was their choice. Also, in my opinion, one of the most uncomfortable things to watch is this 2010 episode of Undercover Boss, where this Hooters manager was cartoonishly terrible, to a point where he had the women engage in a no-hands bean-eating contest to decide which one of them would go home first. Clearly, not everybody at Hooters is like this guy, but allegedly, there's been a lot of inappropriate stuff happening at those restaurants over the years. But yeah, they are still still going pretty strong after 40 years, though there have been points where the future of the chain has come into question. Specifically, during their 30-year anniversary in 2013, they had some slow years leading up to that because their image was arguably becoming stale, while new exciting competitors were stealing away their market share. Consider that Hooters essentially started a new category in the industry, cleverly called a breastraurant, and their success has motivated others to do something similar. Notably, Twin Peaks has grown to over 100 locations, partially from the help of former Hooters executives. In 2011, the former CEO of Hooters, Cody Brooks, along with many others, left that company to become Twin Peaks franchisees, a situation that also led to a lawsuit where Hooters claimed that they stole trade secrets before leaving. Anyway, in 2013, Hooters tried to revitalize things by remodeling a bunch of their restaurants, making them brighter, and adding healthier alternatives to the menu. Since then, they have also been making efforts to attract customers outside of their normal demographic. In 2017, they started a spin-off concept called Hoots Wings, with a much more typical atmosphere where people are dressed much more traditionally. And they have been emphasizing delivery of their food because, as their CEO put it, many people wouldn't step foot in our restaurant, but they want our product. These are good alternatives if you just want their food, but then that raises the question of how many people have been going to Hooters because of the food. You see, so it's all things to think about, but considering that the trend of the industry seems to be people eating at home more anyway, it could be a promising direction for them. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Hooters? That is a big question. Are you one of their dedicated customers that loves the concept and the atmosphere, or are you strictly opposed to them and think that the world would be better off if they were to shut down immediately? Those are two extremes, so I'm guessing you're somewhere in the middle, and there's some good discussions to be had here. Which of these controversies do you personally take issue with, and what do they need to do to improve to win your approval? Before I end the video, I want to say that I realize I touched on some sensitive issues here. They could be tricky to talk about, but I hope you could tell that I did my best to treat them with care while still giving a fair representation of the company. Let me know if you felt that was the case, and any other thoughts you have about Hooters, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.